Oh man, what's up guys? I'm Gavin and this is my fourth vlog, and so it's going to be in English. I have subtitles below, so turn them on if you want. But today I'm going to talk a little bit about our American holiday, Thanksgiving. So today's Sunday, and since Thursday it's kind of all been one long holiday weekend here in the United States called Thanksgiving. And many of you have asked me to describe a little bit about what this means to me, what this means to us as Americans. And essentially it's a time for all of us to gather, all of our family and friends to gather together and talk about what we are thankful for, what blessings that perhaps we haven't acknowledged that we have throughout the year. It has its origins back in the 1600s when the Pilgrims, which is what the people who came over from England were called to colonize North America, when the Pilgrims and the Native Americans gathered together for 3 days. I forget exactly what year in the 1600s it was, but essentially to celebrate a successful harvest and to celebrate coexisting together. Now, since then, relations since that time between the English and Native Americans kind of went downhill, kind of got worse, but that's where the origin was. And then in 1789, our first president, George Washington, made Thanksgiving an official holiday that all Americans celebrate, and that most banks will be closed for, post offices, businesses, and so on, so that we can gather together with family. And my Thanksgiving memories growing up, first of all, kids will have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off of school usually, so it's a really long weekend, 5 days without any school. It's fantastic. And I always remember my cousins coming over to celebrate Thursday and Friday, and they'd sleep over at our house. I have 6 cousins and a sister, and we're all within 5 years of each other so we're all essentially the same age, and it was a really great time to, play in our basement or run around outside. If there was snow outside, we'd sled. Oh my gosh, just such great memories. And nowadays, it's a time to gather with family still, and we're more spread out. I live in Colorado now, so it's harder to see family every single Thanksgiving. We still do it sometimes, but on years that we can't, we still gather together with friends, have a really long dinner table. Everyone makes food, brings food, and we all enjoy each other's company, talk, socialize, eat, and acknowledge what we're thankful for throughout the year. Guys, we forget so much how lucky we are in our situations, and I think it's really easy to kind of not be thankful or forget these things. When Lauren and I always talk about, I read a quote somewhere saying, in the absence of bigger problems, our smaller problems become our bigger problems, okay? So without these really big problems, maybe not having a job, or a family member just died, or you have cancer, or perhaps you're homeless, these are very big problems. But for the rest of us who don't have these big problems, when we don't have these, are small problems. Maybe you're mad at a friend or your spouse for something, or I don't know, you're arguing with your spouse over who's gonna make dinner that night. We need to remind ourselves that in the absence of these bigger problems, these small problems kind of inflate to become our big problems. And Thanksgiving is really a good time to kind of recalibrate the mind and remember that we have so much to be thankful for, and we need to have a good perspective that these really are small problems at the end of the day, So I love Thanksgiving like that, and it's really good to try to be thankful throughout the entire year. And on Thanksgiving especially, whether it's with friends or with family, before or after a prayer, everyone will go around and say what they're thankful for. So a lot of times, yeah, it's family or it's friends or it's a new job, or, it's random things. Like this year, I remember I said, I'm thankful for the internet. Guys, without the internet, YouTube and this connection with you guys wouldn't exist, and we wouldn't get to be able to share this experience. And so, man, I'm so thankful for that. And it's just a time to, remember all these small miracles we have in our lives. It's also an awesome time to eat awesome food. On my Instagram and on my Facebook, I put a picture of my Thanksgiving plate. We went down to Denver to have Thanksgiving with a bunch of friends, and we call it Friendsgiving sometimes when it's with friends instead of Thanksgiving, just a play on words. But I'm gonna show you a little bit. Typically turkey is the big part of the meal, a big turkey. And most American houses have this turkey roasting pan that we use maybe once a year. We don't normally eat turkey during Christmas, and in fact it's actually more common to gather with family and friends for Thanksgiving than for Christmas. I know in Brazil, you guys will typically have the big family gatherings around Christmas, but here it really is Thanksgiving. And we use this about once a year to, you know, cook the big turkey in the oven for, I don't know, about 3 or 4 hours, depending on how many pounds it weighs. I don't have that many leftovers left, so again, go to my Instagram or my Facebook if you want to see a picture of what the plate looked like with all the stuffing and potatoes and vegetables and mac and cheese even, you know, all these great foods. This is all I have left though. This is some of the turkey leg. We say white meat, dark meat. I prefer dark meat. The classic dessert is our pumpkin pie. It'd be really, if you've never tried it, it'd be really hard to explain the flavor because squash is not very sweet, so there's a lot of sugar added to it. It's like a very, very sweet squash pie, and I absolutely love it. Besides that, we have the tradition of watching a ton of football from Thursday through Sunday. I'm talking about American football, which I think is our most popular sport here in the United States nowadays. It used to be baseball, but I'm almost certain it's football. And typically, pro NFL games will happen on Sunday, and college football games will happen on Saturday. But because we have this really long Thanksgiving weekend, the tradition is to have games spaced out over this entire stretch. And, you know, guys especially like the fact that there's so much football to be watched with friends and family during the whole course of this time. And a lot of times with family too, you'll have the backyard football game. And my wife's an ER nurse, and every year there's so many football injuries on Thanksgiving because of these little pickup games going on in backyards. Besides football too, and the meal, which I just showed, and friends and family, a tradition that I don't like so much that happens around Thanksgiving is our tradition of shopping, of consumerism, of acquisition, okay? So especially in the last 30 or 40 years, something's arisen called Black Friday, and that's the Friday after Thanksgiving, Thursday. And typically, a lot of stores will lower their prices the day after Thanksgiving in preparation for Christmas. Everyone will go out and buy everything they need for their family and for their friends on Christmas. And people will get up right at sunrise and go to whatever store and wait for the store to open and run in the store. There's a lot of videos on YouTube about this happening, like at Walmart, for example. People fighting each other to try to, you know, buy these things quicker than other people. And man, Lauren and I really appreciate, you know, a simple lifestyle, an efficient lifestyle, and this aspect, the stereotypical view of the United States, of Americans being greedy and consumerist, is really true and rears its ugly head on Black Friday. The day after, more recently, has become Small Business Saturday, so that's when we focus on the small mom and pop shop, the small businesses around us, you know, and they'll trying to support them instead of these large chains. And then on Monday, maybe some of you have heard of this, it's called Cyber Monday. So that's tomorrow since today's Sunday, but that's when a lot of online businesses, Amazon for example, a lot of online stores will have their prices lowered, and you can go in and get lower prices and get more stuff to accumulate and eventually to give to some people too, I guess, on Christmas. But again, not my favorite part, but that is part of our whole Thanksgiving weekend. I mostly like the thankfulness, the friends, and the food. And fun fact about me before I end, I think about tomorrow being Cyber Monday, and I think about the vast quantity of packages and mail that needs to be sent all over the country because everyone's buying everything online instead of going to a store. If I did not get my doctorate in atmospheric science, and if wasn't doing Portuguese and this YouTube thing as a career now, one career that I've always wanted to try is to work at a post office. I've always wanted to be a delivery man or a mailman. And so I don't know, in another life, maybe, you know, I would be a mailman, and maybe sometime, who knows, 10, 20 years down the road over Christmas and Thanksgiving time when the post office needs more help, I could help them. I think the concept of mail starting out in two different areas, crossing paths, and ending up in the right place in a matter of 2 or 3 days is absolutely fascinating. Like, I can't even believe it happened. So anyway, that's that. I hope you've learned a little more about Thanksgiving and a fun fact about me. And yeah, check out my social networks to see pictures of food, and I will see you in the next vlog. Peace out, guys.